Part 1 was just the beginning. Now, get ready for the next wave of Hollywood's biggest box office disasters. These films, from failed reboots to highly anticipated sequels, were supposed to make waves but ended up sinking. With big budgets, star power, and massive expectations, they still couldn't avoid disaster. In Part 2, we'll uncover the shocking failures that no one saw coming. Stick around. These stories are far from over, and you won't believe what happened next. 2000, The Adventures of Pluto Nash. Eddie Murphy's The Adventures of Pluto Nash, released in 2000, was one of the most notorious flops of the year. Despite its $100 million budget, the sci-fi comedy earned only $7 million at the global box office. The film, set in a futuristic world with Murphy playing a nightclub owner on the moon, was criticized for its weak script, poor pacing, and lackluster special effects. What was meant to be a big-budget comedy turned into an embarrassment, and the film was widely mocked. Critics and audiences alike found the humor to be stale and the storyline uninspired. Despite Murphy's star power, Pluto Nash is remembered as one of the most disastrous miscalculations in Hollywood history. 2001, Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, released in 2001, was an ambitious attempt to bring the iconic video game series to the big screen with cutting-edge CGI animation. However, despite its groundbreaking visuals, the film failed to connect with audiences, earning only $85 million against a massive $137 million budget. Critics were baffled by the film's convoluted plot and lack of character development. The film's heavy reliance on CGI, while visually impressive, left viewers disconnected from the story. What was intended to launch a franchise ended up sinking, making The Spirits Within one of the most infamous video game adaptations to flop commercially. 2003, Gigli. Gigli, released in 2003, is often cited as one of the worst romantic comedies ever made. Starring Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck, the film had an impressive $54 million budget but earned only $7 million. The film's plot, centered around a mobster and a lesbian hitwoman, was criticized for its lack of chemistry between its leads and its lackluster script. Despite the star power of Lopez and Affleck, Gigli was a commercial and critical disaster. Audiences found the film's humor forced, and critics lambasted its awkward pacing. Gigli is a prime example of how even major stars cannot save a poorly executed project. 2004, The Chronicles of Riddick. The Chronicles of Riddick, released in 2004, was the highly anticipated sequel to Pitch Black, but failed to meet expectations at the box office. Despite a budget of $105 million, it earned only $115 million worldwide. While Vin Diesel's return as the anti-hero Riddick was well received, the film's convoluted plot, uneven pacing, and lack of character development left many fans disappointed. The film's visual effects, though impressive, couldn't make up for its slow-moving narrative and confused tone. The Chronicles of Riddick was supposed to launch a larger franchise, but ended up as a financial disappointment, forcing the series into a long hiatus. 2005, Stealth. Released in 2005, Stealth was a big-budget action film starring Jamie Foxx, Jessica Biel, and Josh Lucas, with a budget of $135 million. Despite its star-studded cast and high-tech concept, the film grossed only $76 million worldwide. Critics panned Stealth for its shallow characters and unrealistic portrayal of military technology. The film's over-reliance on CGI and lack of coherent storytelling left viewers unimpressed. While it had all the ingredients for a summer blockbuster, Stealth failed to capitalize on its potential, and it quickly faded into obscurity. The film's failure is a classic example of how visuals alone can't save a story. 2006, Poseidon. Poseidon, released in 2006, was a high-budget disaster film directed by Wolfgang Petersen, based on the 1972 film The Poseidon Adventure. With a budget of $160 million, the film grossed only $181 million worldwide. While it featured impressive special effects and an all-star cast including Kurt Russell and Josh Lucas, the film's plot was criticized for being shallow, and the character development was lacking. Despite its intense action sequences, Poseidon failed to capture the magic of the original, and its box office failure proved that even big-budget spectacle couldn't guarantee success. 2007 Evan Almighty. In 2007, Evan Almighty, a sequel to Bruce Almighty, was expected to be a major hit. With a budget of $175 million, the film earned only $173 million globally. The comedy, starring Steve Carell as a modern-day Noah tasked with building an ark, was criticized for its lack of humor, inconsistent pacing, and over-the-top premise. While Carell's performance was praised, the film struggled to connect with audiences due to its heavy reliance on CGI and lack of compelling emotional stakes. Evan Almighty became an example of how sequels often fail to recapture the magic of their predecessors. 2008 Speed Racer. Speed Racer, released in 2008, was a visually bold and high-energy film directed by the Wachowskis, but it ended up being a financial disaster. With a budget of $120 million, it grossed only $93 million worldwide. The film, based on the classic Japanese animated series, was praised for its vibrant, fast-paced visuals, but critics and audiences found its plot overly simplistic and its characters one-dimensional. The film's reliance on CGI and animation-style visuals alienated many viewers. Despite its artistic ambition, Speed Racer failed to resonate with mainstream audiences and is now considered a cult classic. 2009 Land of the Lost. Land of the Lost, a sci-fi comedy starring Will Ferrell, was released in 2009 with a budget of $190 million but earned only $69 million worldwide. Based on the 1970s television series, the film combined slapstick humor, adventure, and dinosaurs, but critics found the mix of comedy and science fiction to be uneven and poorly executed. Despite Ferrell's popularity, the film struggled to find a wide audience due to its inconsistent tone and lack of engaging plot. Land of the Lost is a prime example of how star power cannot always rescue a weak story. 2010 Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World became a cult classic despite its box office failure, grossing just $47 million against a $60 million budget. Directed by Edgar Wright, the film adapted Brian Lee O'Malley's graphic novel, blending video game aesthetics, rock music, and quirky humor. Audiences struggled with its fast-paced, stylized narrative. Though it initially failed to connect, Scott Pilgrim gained a devoted fanbase over time and is now regarded as one of the most creative and underappreciated films of the 2010s, showing how some films only find their true audience years later. 2011 Mars Needs Moms. Mars Needs Moms, a high-budget animated film, ended up a financial failure, grossing only $39 million worldwide against a $150 million budget. Despite its cutting-edge motion capture animation, the film's characters were unsettling, failing to connect with audiences. The plot, centered on a boy rescuing his kidnapped mother, lacked emotional depth, and the weak narrative further alienated viewers. Despite being a Disney production with big-name voice actors, Mars Needs Moms failed to resonate and served as a cautionary tale about the risks of expensive animation without a strong emotional core or audience connection. 2012 John Carter. John Carter, one of Disney's biggest box office bombs, grossed only $284 million against a $250 million budget. Based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' Barsoom series, the film featured groundbreaking special effects but struggled with confusing marketing that failed to explain its complex plot. Taylor Kitsch's performance was criticized for lacking charisma, and the film's grand narrative failed to engage audiences. Although it later found a small cult following, its commercial failure highlights the challenges of executing a grand, complex story on a massive scale, especially when audience connection is lacking from the start. 2013 The Lone Ranger. The Lone Ranger, starring Johnny Depp as Tonto and Armie Hammer as the titular hero, was a major box office disappointment. With a budget of $225 million, it grossed only $260 million globally, barely covering production costs. Critics found the film's tone uneven, its pacing disjointed, and Depp's portrayal of Tonto controversial. Despite impressive action sequences and visual effects, the film struggled to connect with modern audiences, failing to capture the essence of the beloved classic TV series. Its failure marked the end of hopes for reviving the Western genre in Hollywood. 2014. The Legend of Oz, Dorothy's Return. The Legend of Oz, Dorothy's Return, a direct-to-DVD animated film that made its way to theaters, grossed only $26 million against a $70 million budget. The film's attempt to capitalize on the Wizard of Oz brand failed, as critics found the animation lackluster and the story uninspired. The plot, which involved Dorothy returning to Oz, was criticized for lacking the magic and charm of the original. Despite a notable cast, including Dan Aykroyd and Jim Belushi, the film's flat characters and weak storytelling made it a financial and critical failure. 2015 Pan. Pan, a reimagining of the classic Peter Pan story, struggled at the box office, grossing only $128 million against a $150 million budget. Directed by Joe Wright and starring Hugh Jackman, the film's origin story for Peter Pan was met with confusion. Critics slammed the incoherent plot, weak character development, and overuse of CGI. Jackman's portrayal of Blackbeard was criticized as out of place, and the film failed to deliver the charm and magic expected from the iconic tale. Despite its potential, Pan's failure serves as a reminder that even high-budget films can falter when they lack a compelling narrative. 2016 Max Steel. Max Steel, released in 2016, was a film adaptation of the popular Mattel action figure. With a modest budget of $10 million, it grossed only $6 million worldwide, making it a significant box office disappointment. The film, which follows a teenager who discovers a powerful alien technology, failed to capture the attention of moviegoers, despite its attempt to blend superhero and sci-fi elements. The film's poor CGI effects, lackluster performances, and muddled plot led to poor critical reviews and audience disinterest. Although it had a loyal fan base among those familiar with the toy, Max Steel struggled to find mainstream appeal and quickly faded into obscurity, failing to launch a potential franchise. 2017 King Arthur, Legend of the Sword. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword, released in 2017, was expected to be a major blockbuster, especially with Guy Ritchie directing and Charlie Hunnam starring. However, despite a budget of $175 million, it grossed only $148 million worldwide. The film's gritty, modernized take on the Arthurian legend was polarizing, and audiences were put off by its fast-paced, often incoherent style. Critics found it overstuffed with CGI-heavy action sequences that overshadowed character development and narrative depth. The film's failure to capture the legendary magic of King Arthur's story meant that hopes for a franchise quickly crumbled. King Arthur, Legend of the Sword is now remembered as a significant misstep in both Ritchie's career and in the attempt to revitalize the Arthurian myth in modern cinema. 2018 Mortal Engines. Mortal Engines, released in 2018, had the potential to be the next big franchise in sci-fi, as it was produced by Peter Jackson and based on the popular book series. However, despite a $100 million budget, it grossed only $83 million worldwide. Set in a post-apocalyptic world where cities are mounted on wheels and move across the Earth, the film was criticized for its weak character development and overly complicated plot. The stunning visuals and action sequences weren't enough to offset the lack of emotional engagement, leading to a cold reception from audiences and critics alike. Despite its impressive world-building, Mortal Engines failed to launch a franchise and is often seen as a high-profile failure in modern sci-fi filmmaking. 2019 Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix marked the final chapter of 20th Century Fox's X-Men series, but it fell short of expectations. With a hefty $200 million budget, the film grossed only $252 million worldwide, making it a financial disappointment. The movie focused on Jean Grey's transformation into the Dark Phoenix, but its production was marred by delays and extensive reshoots, leading to a fractured, rushed narrative. Fans were disappointed by the lack of emotional depth, weak character development, and inconsistent pacing. What was supposed to be a powerful conclusion to a beloved franchise instead felt like a missed opportunity. Dark Phoenix ultimately served as a cautionary tale about how mismanagement and unfulfilled potential can doom even a major superhero film. 2020, Dolittle. Dolittle, released in 2020, was marketed as a whimsical family adventure starring Robert Downey Jr. as a doctor who can talk to animals. Despite its $175 million budget, it grossed just $245 million globally, a massive disappointment for Universal. The film was criticized for its incoherent storytelling, inconsistent tone, and over-reliance on CGI, which overwhelmed the narrative. Audiences struggled to connect with the characters, and the humor fell flat, undermining the film's potential to be a franchise starter. Downey Jr.'s star power couldn't save it, and Dolittle became a prime example of how big names and flashy visuals are no guarantee of success without a solid, engaging story. Its poor box office performance put an end to any hopes for sequels. 2021 Snake Eyes G.I. Joe Origins. Snake Eyes, G.I. Joe Origins, released in 2021, was an attempt to reboot the G.I. Joe franchise, focusing on the iconic character of Snake Eyes. Despite a star-studded cast and high expectations, the film struggled to find its footing, earning only $40 million against an $88 million budget. The movie was criticized for its lackluster storytelling, uninspired performances, and failure to capture the action-packed excitement that made the original G.I. Joe franchise beloved. While it aimed to explore the origin of Snake Eyes, the film's weak character development and confusing plot failed to engage both G.I. Joe fans and newcomers alike. The film's lack of success at the box office and negative reception from critics meant that hopes for expanding the franchise were quickly dashed. Snake Eyes stands as a reminder that even iconic franchises need more than just a familiar name to succeed in today's crowded cinematic landscape. 2022 Strange World. Strange World, released in 2022, was an ambitious animated film from Disney that failed to make an impact at the box office. With a budget of $180 million, the film grossed only $73 million worldwide. Set in a mysterious, uncharted world, Strange World had a unique visual style and an adventurous plot, but its lack of emotional depth and underwhelming storytelling left audiences cold. Critics found the film's characters underdeveloped, and the world-building, though visually stunning, lacked substance. The film's weak box office performance marked a rare misstep for Disney, whose other animated films typically perform well. The failure of Strange World demonstrated that even Disney's proven formula of family-friendly adventure couldn't guarantee success without a strong, compelling narrative. It also highlighted the importance of marketing and audience connection in an era where even visually stunning films can struggle to find an audience. 2023 Shazam, Fury of the Gods. Shazam. Fury of the Gods, released in 2023, was expected to build on the success of the first Shazam movie, but it underperformed at the box office. With a production budget of $125 million, the film grossed only $132 million worldwide. While the first Shazam film had earned positive reviews and a decent box office return, the sequel failed to capture the same magic. Critics pointed out issues with the film's uneven tone, lack of compelling character development, and over-reliance on CGI. Additionally, with the looming changes in the DC universe under new leadership, Fury of the Gods felt disconnected from the broader superhero landscape. The film's poor performance reflected audience fatigue with the DC extended universe and a lack of excitement for characters not tied to the bigger DC films, leaving it as one of 2023's disappointing superhero releases. 2024 Joker, Folie à Deux. The much-anticipated sequel to Joker, Folie à Deux, released in 2024, was expected to repeat the success of its predecessor. However, the film faced challenges that hindered its box office performance. With a massive production budget, expectations were high, but early indicators showed that audience reception was mixed. Despite the return of Joaquin Phoenix and the addition of Lady Gaga, the film's darker and more complex themes alienated some viewers. The sequel's success hinged on its ability to match the intensity and cultural impact of the original Joker, but it struggled to strike the same emotional chord. Critics noted that, while it was an ambitious follow-up, the film's unique artistic vision may not resonate with as wide an audience as hoped. Early reports indicated that Folie Deux would not have the same lasting cultural impact as the first film, making it a potential disappointment. 2025, Snow White. Snow White, released in 2025, was a highly anticipated live-action remake from Disney. Despite a massive production budget of $200 million, the film grossed only $132 million worldwide, making it one of the biggest disappointments of the year. The film starred Rachel Zegler as Snow White and Gal Gadot as the Evil Queen, but it faced significant backlash for its departure from the original classic. Critics and audiences criticized the film for its lackluster plot, overuse of CGI, and controversial updates to the beloved characters. While Disney's live-action remakes have often been hits, Snow White failed to capture the magic of the animated original and quickly became one of Disney's most infamous box office flops. The film's failure highlighted growing fatigue with Disney's remakes and a disconnect with audiences who wanted something more faithful to the classic tale. 2026, Desert Warrior. The biggest box office bomb of 2026 so far is Desert Warrior, released in April with a massive budget of $150 million. Despite starring Anthony Mackie and Ben Kingsley, the film grossed only about $517,500 globally. The epic historical action movie, intended to be a big-budget spectacle, saw an abysmal domestic opening with under $600,000 in its first weekend across over 1,000 theaters. Critics panned the film for its weak storytelling, poor pacing, and lack of chemistry among the lead actors. The film's disappointing performance has led to widespread comparisons with some of the biggest box office failures in history. With such a steep financial loss, Desert Warrior is being dubbed one of the most infamous movie flops in recent memory, highlighting how even star power and heavy promotion can't always save a film from failure. And that's a wrap on Part 2 of Hollywood's biggest box office disasters. These films were meant to make waves, but instead sunk without a trace. From flawed reboots to epic misfires, these stories prove that even the most promising projects can turn into catastrophic failures. Stay tuned for more shocking tales in the world of cinematic flops.